And as its numbers continue to grow, ISIS is pretty much getting to be everywhere. More than 7,500 foreign fighters from some 50 countries believed to be fighting alongside ISIS in Iraq and Syria. Look at all those red countries. Those are all ISIS recruit countries, including more than 100 from this country. The president never really explained or got much into that. Some say he even deliberately avoided that. To UK politician Nigel Farage, who says, do not risk doing that. The ISIS threat is real and it is widespread. Nigel, very good to have you back. You talked about it yourself, sir, about the 1,000 British recruits to ISIS in just your fine country. What is going on here? What do you think is behind this successful recruiting effort?
Well, the growth of jihadism. And it's something that's been going on. And we all know it's been funded by the Saudis, the Qataris, and other people that we call our friends in the Middle East because we do business with them. But we turn a blind eye to the consequences of what their money does. And I'm sorry, but that's the truth of it. And we've turned a blind eye. And what I've seen in the UK, and I have some understanding that in America it's similar, is that much of this recruitment to extremism is going on within the organisations of the state. It's happening within schools, and especially it is happening within prisons. And one of the reasons it's being allowed to happen within the organs of our state is that we as governments, we as nations, we as countries are not being robust enough in defending our values. We've been weak, and they've taken advantage of us. Now, you have others who argued last time you were here, Leader, we got a lot of criticism, mostly in support of you, but some critically said, look, it has nothing to do with multiculturalism, it has nothing to do with that. A lot of the recruits that they get, for example, in this country, the Minnesota area, are Somali refugees who are predisposed to this kind of thinking, but they're economically hurting, and that these voids are always filled in such environments. What do you say to that? I'm sorry. And I will now speak for the UK, not for the US, but I'm guessing there are parallels. We have been through in my country, over the course of the last 20 years, particularly since Blair became Prime Minister back in '97, a level of open-door immigration to the whole of the world on a scale that we have never seen before. And allied to that has been a taxpayer-funded state idea that multiculturalism is good. Now, let's just define, Neil, what we mean. If we mean by multiculturalism people of different religions, of different skin colour, living together within the same community, I have absolutely no problem with that whatsoever, and I'm sure none of your viewers on this show do either. But if what we mean by multiculturalism is actually encouraging people to stick to their original languages, to stick to their original religions to a total exclusion of what everybody else in that country may be, if we use money to encourage division within society, then is it any wonder we're in the mess we are now? And I first spoke out about this 10 years ago. And let me tell you, I was called all the names under the sun for daring to attack this PC, politically correct, wonderful, marvellous agenda of multiculturalism within my country. And now what I see in every British city and every British town are ghetto areas, are divided communities, are people whose kids don't speak the same language, and a divided country. And that from the one country in Europe that actually had the best race relations of any of them. You know, if you think about it, Nigel, I mean, since, and you're right, you were talking about this a decade ago, but now the chickens sort of come home to roost here, because even our own government, Homeland Security, here yesterday acknowledging that our border along Mexico is indeed porous, and that the nefarious elements, ISIS, could get through if they haven't already. It was a belated acknowledgement of something folks like you and others have said about porous borders or open borders or just too accommodating borders. But now I got the impression, well, now we know. Does that mean it's too late? Does that mean that the bad guys are either here or in your country, and that our focus and your Prime Minister's focus on getting them in Syria or Iraq, or our President's focus on doing the same thing, misses the fact that they're already in your respective countries? I am sorry to say that I rather agree with the tone of that question. And I think there is a fifth column that exists in the UK and exists within the USA. Yes, it's here already, but that doesn't mean we should exacerbate it. Doesn't mean we should make it worse. It means we must from now on be really, really careful about protecting our borders, about making sure that those that want to come and live with us and work with us are the right people. And I also repeat the point, Neil, I made last week. I genuinely believe that if citizens of our countries have been to Syria or Iraq to fight for ISIS or any similar organisation, we would be mad, literally mad, to allow them back into our countries. So I can't turn the clock back. I tried 10 years ago to stop this from happening, and I was shouted down. But what we can do is to make sure that it doesn't get worse. And I'm afraid within our own states, we're going to have to be very, very vigilant indeed. And that probably means, and I'm sad to say this, but it probably means giving up some of the liberties that previously we've enjoyed.
One of the things we've discovered, Nigel, and of course at the anniversary of the 9/11 attacks here in this country, your country certainly no stranger to terror attacks, repeated ones at that, that among those picked up were former TSA workers. In other words, that they're within our system, they're within our transportation, they're at our airports. Not across the board, but enough that it does raise eyebrows that they could do some bad stuff and might be planning that bad stuff. And because ISIS in this case is so well financed, it's not like Al-Qaeda, and it's socially network savvy. Again, not like Al-Qaeda. Does that worry you? And are we missing that piece of the puzzle when either your country, our country, or other countries work in concert fighting these guys?
Well, my previous comment to you, Neil, was that I thought we would have to surrender some of the previous liberties and freedoms that we enjoyed in order to deal with something that is a crisis that does actually, and let's be serious, this faces the very existence of our civilization. There are people out there, there are people within here that want to destroy us. And their main means of communication is social media. And I'm afraid that the state and the services and the authorities that are paid and empowered to protect us are going to have more powers to deal with these people, and they will do it via social media. And I hate to say this because it seems to me that if I ring you on a Sunday night to talk about the football game or whatever it may be, or we email each other to talk about mutual friends, I would rather live in a world where that was free and private and where we had
absolutely.
our liberty. But I'm afraid, but I'm afraid that we're now in territory that is so serious. And I say this, not willing for this to happen, but let's just remember that ISIS have said they will launch terrorist attacks on Britain and the United States of America. And I would suggest we take those threats seriously. And if by monitoring social media we can stop this happening, then I'm afraid it's a price that all of us are going to have to pay.
Well, I don't know what the British equivalent is, Nigel, but we have libertarians in this country who don't like that. That if you sacrifice the very freedoms you have in our respective democracies to keep folks safe, then you've given up what you're all about. What do you say to that?
I myself come from what I would call the mild libertarian wing of politics. I hate big government. I can't stand government telling us what we can and can't do, impinging upon our freedoms and our choices. I can't stand the fact that I can't smoke a cigarette in the local pub, or I'm told whether I can hunt foxes or not. I'm sick of big government. I hate speed cameras. I hate speed cameras and all of it. But we're not talking here. We're not talking here about our social lives. We're talking here about people living within our countries who, if they're given the opportunity, will kill thousands of us. We faced, and you faced as well, we faced in history foreign countries who we were mortally locked into battle with and whom we had to beat. And we beat Nazism, and we beat the evils that had overtaken Japan. And we did those things. Our parents' generation did those things at a massive, massive cost, but they were the right things to do. But for the first time, I think, certainly in the history of the USA, and pretty much in any serious measure in the history. I mean, you know, we had Guy Fawkes who tried to blow up this building behind me once, but you know, we've now got the fifth column inside our countries, and you know, you and I can debate what we ought to be doing in Syria, in Iraq, but surely our first priority is to maintain the citizens' safety in our own countries. And I'm sorry, but if that means giving up just a few of those freedoms, I think we have to do it, because if we don't, the consequences could be so grave that we would never, ever forgive ourselves.